Africa's youth unemployment crisis is deepening, with 46.1% of young people between the ages of 15 and 34 out of work. That's nearly 5 million lives on pause. The latest data shows the problem isn't just growing, but it's structural. Youth Capital is a national campaign pushing for solutions to this urgent challenge. And joining us is acting project lead at Youth Capital, Clotilde Angelucci, to explain what's driving the crisis and what needs to change now. Clotilde, good morning and welcome to the program. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. The Q1 2025 data shows youth unemployment climbing to 46.1%. It's something you describe as a systemic failure. In your view, what are the core structural issues that are driving what seems to be a persistent crisis?
Thanks, Iman. So we must remember that, unemployment is the single biggest cause of poverty and inequality. And South Africa is a country that's got some of the highest inequality rates in the world. So we've seen that the expanded definition of unemployment sees that almost 1 in 2 young people between the ages of 15 and 35 are not employed, and they're very discouraged from looking for work. But if we look at this in the context of this budget season, we've seen that in the last 10 years, National Treasury has been really focusing on cutting costs and balancing our debt instead of really putting money into meeting the socio-economic needs of the South African population. And we've seen that 50% of the working age population is young people. So young people's needs are actually South Africa's needs.
So part of what you have found is that over 4 in 10 young people are classified as NEET or NEET, not in education, employment or training. What are the long-term risks that this poses to South Africa's socio-economic fabric, and what immediate interventions are needed to reverse that trend?
Yes, so there's been a steady increase in the number of young people that are not in education, employment or training. And we've also seen that women are the most hit. They usually suffer from double burden. So there is a predominant gender gap in accessing skills and employment opportunities. I think what's important to say here is that at Youth Capital, we've been saying for a number of years that research shows that the longer young people are out of the job market, the harder it is to re-enter it, because employers see them as risky hires. So in this case, data says also shows that 6 in 10 young unemployed people have never worked before. So in this context, the issue of work experience is really critical. And we've seen that public employment programs have been providing young people with essential work experience. And in most cases, it's the first work experience that has really connected young people with skills, but also mentorship and social connections that has helped them then get a foothold in the market. The only thing that we need to say in this is that young people have all the energy and the talent, and they've got determination to look for employment. But the problem is that our economy hasn't been growing at the rate that we need to. So the question is that once young people leave these short-term opportunities, how can we incentivize businesses around these areas to hire young people or to promote self-employment opportunities?
I want to pick up on that thread you spoke about in the beginning around the budget, sensibilities or demands. We're managing costs and balancing debt. You reference a budget 3.0. What would a credible, youth-focused macroeconomic strategy look like in practice to ensure that young people are not just included in recovery plans, but that they are prioritized? Because it's that prioritization piece that what I'm hearing you say is missing.
Often, thanks for this question. Often social investment is classified from Treasury as a social expenditure, right? And we know that National Treasury has been busy with a review of active labor market policies. And we're really hoping as Youth Capital that we can see some of those insights. But I think something that is credible and relevant for young people is to plan for an economy where unemployment is structural. Because even if we had a magic wand and we created like over 9 million work opportunities, young people wouldn't have the skill, support, and the knowledge to tap into those opportunities. So how are we going to plan for a system of support that takes into the considerations that some people will get into these opportunities and will get reskilled, but others will never make it into the job market. So a consistent funding to public employment opportunities, that's really important. But also we mustn't look at cash transfers as a dichotomy, as a competitor of public employment programs. We've seen that together there is the economic value of these opportunities, but also there's the work experience. So we can't consider cash transfers or cash support as going against the public employment opportunities. Together, they can really make sure that young people have money to spend in their local economies, but also can gain their first work experience.
So I think this is interesting what you point to, the Basic Education Employment Initiative, which you cite as an example of a successful public employment program. So what lessons are you drawing from its impact, and why do you think that budget cuts to those kinds of programs persist, despite the fact, from your perspective, they do work?
So the Basic Education Employment Initiative is to date the largest employment programs that spoke directly to young people. And it took place in every school across the country, which means that the scale was unprecedented because any community has got a school. And we've seen, for example, in the status release yesterday, that some areas are mostly, and rural areas are mostly hit by a high youth unemployment and poor participation. So the Basic Education Employment Initiative really re-energized the local economies of areas that are often considered economic deserts. And there's further research that has actually shown the financial impact of young people receiving like a stipend that was paid at minimum wage and how it was spent in the economy. So in this way, we've actually seen how the Basic Education Employment Initiative has played this trickle-up effect into the economy. As young people worked, they had purpose in their lives. Work was within 5 kilometers of where they lived, which is also helped deal with the high cost of transports and getting to work. And but the issue is that the budget for these programs has shrunk. And we saw that last year the program was actually put on hold because of delays in payment between National Treasury and the Unemployment Insurance Fund. So the program is starting again this year, but for a reduced number of young people and also for a reduced time. So it's important that these programs are funded in the medium to long term. They can't be considered a stopgap because we see the impact accumulating over the years.
Clotilde, I mean, I want to end with, because you've shared, I think, some good information and perspective on where the opportunities are to reverse what we're seeing. And when you reiterate what you said earlier, 1 in 2 young people between the ages of 15 and 34 unemployed in South Africa, and that 6 out of 10 have never worked before. It's just, and one can only imagine what that does to, the spirit of a young person who's at the beginning of their lives, full of optimism, potentially wanting to be a viable, member of society, but also wanting to see some impact in their own lives. When you look at the repeat decisions that we keep making, and without any serious change, we're not going to have a different outcome. As we've always said, doing the same thing, expecting a different result is insanity. What are you hoping for? In fact, let me ask a different question. What do you think is going to really wake the policymakers up and wake the decision makers up to the fact that this needs to be considered a crisis and an emergency and do something different?
I think the fact that this has been an upward trend in the last 10 years should have already woken up our decision makers, because, as you said, we can't keep on doing the same thing and expect a different result. I also think that the fact that the number of young people in long-term unemployment is really worrying, especially because we are a young country where young people have the potentials that could really turn our economy around. So I'm really hoping that ahead of budget, our decision makers really spend time with young people in their communities where they're from, and they hear the stories, because often what these numbers cover is the fact that young people wake up every single day. Young people in our network tell us about the solutions that they come up to make money. But these are systemic challenges. The odds are stacked against them.
Well, it's clear that youth unemployment isn't just a crisis of numbers, it's a crisis of opportunity, dignity and direction. And as we've been reminded there, young people need more than hope. They need access, experience and investment, and it's going to take bold and coordinated action. Thank you very much, Clotilde Angelucci. I appreciate your time this morning.